Stark is a sickness.
Aw, Junior. You're gonna break your old man's heart.
If I have to.
Nobody has to break anything.
Clearly, you've never made an omelet.
You beat me by 1 second.
Ah, this is funny, Mr. Stark. It's what, comfortable? Like old times?
This was never my life.
You two can still walk away from this.
No, we will.
I know you've suffered.
Captain America. God's righteous man. Pretending you could live without a war. I can't physically throw up in my mouth, but
If you believe in peace, then let us keep it.
I think you're confusing peace with quiet.
Do you expect me to talk?
Hello, and welcome to episode 132 of Do You Expect Us to Talk? I'm your host, Becca, and as always, joined by my super friends Chris and Dave. How are you?
Good evening, folks.
Wasn't Super Friends Justice League or was that Spider-Man?
No, it was 70s. It was basically Justice League, yeah. Batman was in it.
But you're
God,
my friends,
Becca.
and you are super, so, you know.
Wrong franchise.
I'm speaking away from comic books.
Okay, fair
That you
enough.
are super and that you are friends, so, you know.
We're super
talk-
friendly.
I talk across franchises.
Okay, fair enough. Good evening. Or good morning, if whoever's listening.
Or good night. One of these days, we will do that film.
There's people listening to this early afternoon who feel totally disenfranchised by all of that now.
What about those who listen mid-morning?
Oh, for fuck's sake. Right, anyway.
Brunch time?
Or for those who've discovered a meal between breakfast and brunch.
Yeah, I doubt that comes up at the patent office very often. I've discovered a new meal.
Between lunch and dinner. Oh.
Right.
Anyway, this is going totally off topic. Today, at long last, we discuss Avengers Age of Ultron, starring Deep Breath.
Why at long last? Was there is there anticipation to this film that I'm not aware
Well,
of?
hang on. To be fair, this is our 7th episode after the hiatus, and it's only the 3rd one that's Marvel.
Fair enough.
And when you think we're on the Marvel series,
True. Okay.
About bloody time. Again, thanks to everybody for bearing with us. Anyway,
she'll still be apologising for that hiatus in 2 years' time.
I will.
I'm really sorry. A couple of years ago, I moved house. Anyway,
It was beyond my control.
cool.
Yes, amongst many other people, this movie stars Chris Hemsworth, Robert Downey Jr., James Spader, Scarlett Johansson, Samuel L. Jackson, Mark Ruffalo, Chris Evans, Paul Bettany, Aaron Taylor-Johnson, Elizabeth Olsen, and many, many more. Score by Danny Elfman, or music by Danny Elfman and Brian Tyler. Characters by Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, and Joe Simon. Written and directed by Golden Boy Joss Whedon, and released in 2015.
Less of a golden boy by the end of the filming of this, I think.
Yeah, I think it was much hype. I think there was as much hype for Whedon as there was for this film.
Well, I think it was a lot
But I
of the
think as
fact that all the way through Phase 2, we were told Whedon was consulting with everyone. He was consulting with all the directors, so he was involved with talking to Shane Black, sorry.
Who's that?
Yeah, he just randomly met some guy called James Black. No, he did have conversations with Shane Black. He did with Alan Taylor. He did with James Gunn, and there were little mini rewrites he was getting involved with to just sort of make sure that the tone was being kept for this. So whilst we think of sort of Kevin Feige as the mastermind of Marvel, which to this date is still true, there was a feeling at the time that this sort of series was basically being shaped by Joss Whedon. The first Avengers film had been massively, massively successful and really well received. So I think there was a lot of excitement coming to this. And then obviously, debatably, the end result doesn't quite live up to that hype. And Whedon's had nothing to do with Marvel since. And I've always felt like this film kind of broke him a little bit. You know, he was exhausted making it. They were arguing a lot over Final Cut and who was going to do what was going to be in it, what wasn't going to be in it. And it's that horrible middle ground where nobody has clearly won or lost. Bits of scenes are in, you know. Thor's vision at one point in the film is sort of half there, and it'd be better either left or taken out completely.
Yeah, as if they couldn't come to a decision to leave it in or leave it out.
So you're right to say Golden Boy. As we came into this, I'd be less confident to say he was still that as we came out of it. But they still gave him like well over $300 million to make this.
I think considering
there was a lot of confidence
considering what they
in
went through, I think he did. It's a similar sort of difficult production. I think he did well to kind of weather the storm. But yeah, he kind of the shine had worn off, I guess, towards the end of this film.
Yeah, well, he could leave and take his magical touch to Justice League.
But hey, he did a really good adaptation of that film that he made.
Shakespeare.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Yeah, but
which
that
one
was 3 years before this.
Was it Much Ado?
That was ages before this, though. I mean,
which I love, and I'm sorry I couldn't remember.
That was done about the same time as Avengers. Roughly,
it was.
Wasn't it?
Yeah, it was around the same sort of time.
Yeah.
Much Ado.
Yeah,
well,
so I just think there was an awful lot of hype, and of course, Age of Ultron. You think, right, we're building into some new continuity that's going to spread over a number of films, and the end result just seems really, really compromised because it's not an age of fucking anything. It's a one-off. At this stage, I mean, who knows? He might come back in Endgame or something, but Ultron to this stage has been a one-shot deal. As much as I like James Spader's voice, I think the character was pretty half-assed. I think the plot is pretty half-assed. I think it's what I thought the first film would be. I all the way leading up to Avengers, I thought this isn't going to be good. Trying to cram all these characters into one film. Now, this isn't necessarily overstuffed in the same way as some of the later films, but it is only half servicing little things. So you got a little bit of Thor in this, and then you got a little bit of Chris Evans and Hayley Atwell, and then it comes away from that and it's about something else. And the whole sort of Ultron thing doesn't quite make sense once you start thinking about it, because there's lots of sort of internet capable network devices he seemingly can't get into. I mean, really, they shouldn't be able to fucking fly anywhere. No. Do you know what I mean? With Ultron on the scene. And I just think, they pull out, they've got to create stakes and they've got to create side plots. So you get this sort of love story between Banner and, what do we want to call her? Natasha, I suppose, Romanoff.
Yeah.
You get a love story between those two that's really, really half-baked and pulled out of nowhere. And actually, the scenes are pretty sweet. I think the scenes are well done, and I think Whedon has actually had her shot quite well in this film. I don't like the wig very much, but where they're sort of flirting across the bar at sort of the Avengers Tower, I think that's a really nice scene, really well shot, and she's really quite alluring there. So it's not all bad. It's funny. I think all Joss Whedon sort of films have plenty of sort of decent banter between characters. I hate that fucking word, but it's the best way to describe it. Banter, yeah. Yeah, it's a straight left on anyone's dating profile when you see, I love banter, do you? Bye. But yeah, bants, yeah. But, it meant, entirely as we would apply it to this sort of stuff. Yeah, the sort of interplay between the characters is still really good, still really sharp. There's a couple of really funny scenes in it. There's a brilliant Stan Lee cameo in it. The action's not altogether bad, but even then, there are beats we're going to get to where I just think, it's getting tired now. There's one particular beat, and I've mentioned it to Chris on a podcast before, where Whedon's very fond of a particular action beat, and we see it here from Clint Barton, I think. And it's like, I'm sick of seeing that now. It takes a split second, and it doesn't matter that much.
Ad nauseum, really, doesn't he?
It's the one where someone's approaching our hero. We don't think the hero knows he's there, and at the last minute he'll sort of throw a fist at them or just lift his arm whilst not looking at them and knock them out. He's done that to death. It's overdone in action, full stop, particularly sort of family-friendly type action. So I mean, from my perspective, this film is a complete mess, and it's the worst team up of the lot of them. And I have to include Captain America: Civil War in that because it is kind of half an Avengers film. That it didn't gross quite the same because it doesn't have Avengers in its title. So there's a lot of people who probably didn't go to see it. But yeah, it's the weakest of the team ups. It doesn't have the same problems with sort of overstuffing as some of the later ones, but it's half-assing half of the stories. And I don't particularly like the new characters. Now, the Maximoff twins, well, she's improved over each, appearance because of, she started dropping the accent for a start. That's made a big difference, Wanda Maximoff.
Yeah, she sounds really different.
She sounds really different
What's
here.
wrong with her accent here?
Sorry?
What's wrong with her accent here? I feel there's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah. And Aaron Taylor Johnson.
Okay.
Aaron Taylor Johnson looks like a cut character from GTA 4.
Yeah.
Pietro Maximoff just looks like he should be one of the sort of Nico Bellic's family in like Grand Theft Auto 4. Awful character. Glad when he was killed off, to be honest.
Looks like he's like should be in like a speed racer type game.
I don't really know, but it's a step away from fucking shell suits and that. It's pretty awful. The whole Vision thing is kind of half-assed, and I've still got problems to this day of what exactly is Vision's skill set, because it seems to be all over the shop, and when he appears in this film, he's massively overpowered. You feel like he could go out and fight it all by himself.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit kind of like he's kind of got all the powers.
Yeah.
And at the same time, he's kind of scaled back, and it's like, okay.
Little nods to Haley Atwell, little, Peggy Carter, things like that, and Heimdall from our characters, where you think, okay, is there a theme to what they're dreaming here? Are they trying to get them to miss their past? I don't really know. So yeah, I've talked for a long time there, but my opening thoughts are this is a complete mess, but it's not an unenjoyable mess. It's pretty easy to get through. It's fine, but it's the weakest team up.
Becca, what do you think?
Yeah. No, I would agree with all the above. Obviously, I had a lot of production issues around sort of editing, and a lot of that ends up on the screen. I think again we've got another sort of similar quantum sort of situation. Obviously, not on that kind of scale. But yeah, there was a lot of hype in going into this, and it kind of didn't really live up to expectations to me. I think James Spader. I mean, I feel really bad saying this, but like he's in a different film altogether. I kind of feel that a lot of his scenes were left on the cutting room floor. He really, he wants to get his teeth into this really kind of quite nasty, quite villainous role, and he ends up. But to me, I sort of perceive him as kind of like almost pantomime, moustache twirling type villain.
He's kind of way too comic.
Yeah, I mean, he's good. He is one of those talented actors who can do both, and turn kind of on a dime, as it were, and have skills across both sort of serious drama and high comedy. But at the same time, you just kind of think, really, and I do feel that that there was a lot left out, and like it doesn't. The whole general flow of this film doesn't really kind of flow very well at all for me. I had a difficult time with this film at the cinema, and again watching it for this podcast, I was like, oh, hopefully I'll enjoy it more, on a repeat viewing. No.
I always thought that the first film, I think, just to expand that point just a little, sorry to bring it back to me, but I don't think I've fully fleshed out that point. Where I was saying it's what I feared in the first one, I think that Iron Man 2 syndrome, where you spend most of your film setting up other films. Well, we go to Wakanda and meet Andy Serkis's character. Claw, is it? Claw, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Claw. And it's just like, well, he's not really needed in this film, but they cram him into a scene because they're setting something up for another time. And I hate that kind of film.
And this shit's 4 years down the pipeline as well.
And it was
Exactly.
years later.
And it's quite busy. You're already trying to set up Ultron and all the rest of it, but it's like you've got to cram in Andy Serkis as well. He's welcome in any film. I will watch him anytime.
That hits the point entirely. It's 4 years away. They cast him years before we saw him again. So, yeah, was it 4 years? 3 years. Long enough, though.
Yeah, it's 2015, so yeah, it's about that time, isn't it?
Yeah, 3 or 4 years to go.
So, really crap.
I mean, yeah, it's a bit of an odd film there. I mean, in a way, I completely agree with all you, because I remember seeing this being really super pumped. Oh my god, Avengers 2, this is going to be, the first one just really nailed the head. It could, hit the ball straight out of the park first time round. And I remember watching it at the cinema, I was just thinking, something's not quite right here. Why am I almost like just zoning out this? And it's been nothing. So when I look at it objectively, I think it's there. It's got all the ingredients. It's got a fairly decent plot. You got like interesting enough villain. Got good cast.
The villains have been shit in most of Marvel, to be fair. So this, even if you weren't, even half decent, is like, well, they're never that good. So this isn't bad.
Well, he's basically James Spader, speaking Joss Whedon dialogue. Being like a really sarcastic, evil robot. Though why that's never really properly explained why he has like this sarcastic tick. Maybe it's Tony Stark thing, I don't know. But
I wonder if it is,
possibly. I mean,
okay, that's probably likely.
Possibly. I mean, I've literally just thought of it now as I said it, but so that might be it. But then again, it isn't entirely fleshed out. We're guessing here, so I don't know. It's as Dave said, like the scenes aren't particularly bad. The actions isn't particularly bad. I liked how they actually gave Clint Barton something to do this time around.
He gets busy.
Even though at the time I remember like rumors like he's gonna kill. They're gonna kill for the Avenger this time. I get hearing mutterings of they're gonna kill one of them off. Are you thinking right? So they're just gonna give Jamie Renner like. A successful role this time around and then kill him off because no one needs Arrow Boy. But they didn't this time around. But anyway, so yeah, I don't know. There's something about it is just off. I don't know what it is. I think it's just when a film doesn't quite come together, it just shows. It just doesn't land the way that you want it to land, and it's a shame.
Somehow it doesn't look fun. It doesn't look like they enjoy. I imagine they always have a few laughs. I can't imagine like Robert Downey Jr. just his whole attitude to life these days being such that he wouldn't have some fun with this. But at the same time, it doesn't look like it was fun to make. I think that's the bottom line. I just think it looks like it was a bit of a fucking slog. I think as well, even though Phase 2 had been quite successful, and particularly what we said about 2014 being such a successful year, there must have been some pressure on this. Because Whedon hasn't made anything big since the first one, since the one from, a couple of years before, 2012. And he suddenly got to go and follow one of the most popular comic book films ever made. And it all feels a bit rabbit caught in the headlights, just a little bit.
Yeah, possibly because it is literally carrying a franchise on his shoulders at this point. Because they all essentially these are like the bookmarks of it. These are like the what should be the high point. It's like where they all come together. Also got Thanos as well, which we won't properly see till like this year.
Again, he's going in mid-credit scene. I'll do it myself in 3 years' time. So
4 years' time. Yeah.
In some respects, in hindsight, we're only 2 films away from Civil War. Now, unfortunately, Civil War needs the plot of this film to work. It needs what happens in this film to give them the ammunition to drive them through the plot of that film. But just in terms of the logistics of building to peaks and sort of troughs and crescendos, if you like, within the sort of flow of the cinematic universe as a whole, I almost wish Age of Ultron wasn't here, because we've got an effective Avengers film the following year anyway with Civil War.
Well, I was just about to say, I think Civil War pretty much just like was the apology. Almost. It was almost like okay, well, like just politely ignore Age of Ultron because
it's the film you should have had.
Well, no, it didn't do a Star Trek Beyond and ignore the previous film. It was all about what you do after Sokovia happened. So the plot of this film was absolutely vital.
Yeah.
But I just think time is starting to prove, and I say starting because we've got to hedge our bets before Endgame comes out. But it's starting to prove the Russos are a better fit to this material. Whedon did a great job with the first one just because, boyish enthusiasm came in, his first crack at it. Let's get them all wisecracking. Let's keep it nice and light. And he did it. Once you start putting the weight of the world on him, it just seemed to like break him somewhat. Whereas the Russos just handle that pressure, no problem.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. I mean, it's difficult to say. I'm not seeing any other Russo's films other than Marvel, but I don't know what it is about them. I was thinking about this the other day. The Russos. Do you think, and maybe it's been confirmed that they do, but being as the two directors, do you think they go off and like film separately? Like, okay, well, I'll shoot scenes with Robert Downey, and I'll shoot scenes with Chris Evans, and they both kind of save time.
I don't know.
It was just a thought.
Most directing teams are actually sat beside each other at the same time. So I would think so. It's probably on special features, but I haven't really watched any this time, so I couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
I think they just sort of work as a hive mind effectively. I don't think they go off and do other things.
Yeah, I was just thought like, so okay, well, there's two of us, we can be at two places at once. But anyway, so yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it was just a bit. I don't know what it is. It just didn't work. I mean, it's not terrible because there's nothing in it that's particularly badly done. There are moments in it. I think it works best when the team are just like hanging out, like when they're just like at the party.
But
just,
that's what Whedon's best at. That's what I mean. There's something about him that's got a lightness, which is why I think he was better first time out. Yes, there's some pressure, but like, would anyone really have blamed him if the Avengers hadn't been amazing? Because it's kind of a gamble anyway, the first time you do it.
Yeah.
This team, I remember Robert Downey Jr. at this Comic-Con saying, this is possibly the most ambitious film ever made. Well, there's hyperbole in that, but I got what he meant. That, like, no one's really tried to do this before, not with these sorts of budgets. And there's something about boyish enthusiasm that drives you through. When you've got to try and, work through the mechanics of an entire phase against a studio that's already thinking of the next phase, it's clearly not gone so well. It is better 3 years on. At the time, it was Whedon's second go after the Avengers. Brilliant. Can't wait to see what he does next, because the Avengers was great. And of course, 3 years on, it's just another team up, and Marvel are always all right. And this is okay too, but it's not going to rank very high.
No, I don't think so either. But it's not terrible. Again, it's a weird thing. It's a weird thing. Like I'll look at what it's made up and think this should be better, and it just somehow just doesn't materialize. It just feels like just.
But occasionally, and we're likely wrong every time we think this, because we don't have the talent. Otherwise, we'd be doing it. But quite often, when you see a film, I've never been under the illusion I could go and write a great film. I don't believe that at all. But every now and again, when I see a film, I think I could rewrite that. I know what's wrong with it.
Yeah.
Or I could at least start the process of reshaping it. I could start the process of going, but you need to move that there and lose this and tighten that bit. Whether I'd be able to do the actual specifics of all that, I don't know. But I could map what's wrong. Here, I'm not quite sure. I think that's the problem. There's something wrong with this film, and I'm not quite sure what it is in all cases. I can pick on little examples, and I'll pick on loads as we go through it, but I don't know what you do to fix it. You change the title, because Age of Ultron is a stupid fucking title for this film, but
is it the name of the comic?
I don't know is the honest answer. I know Ultron was a character created by Hank Pym in the comics. Hank Pym created him, but obviously,
I was going to say it was created by Ant-Man himself.
Oh, but obviously Hank Pym isn't introduced till next week. So unless you're going to rush, because there were some complaints at the time, that's bullshit, Hank Pym. And what do you want 10 minutes at the start of the film where we rush an introduction of Hank Pym just so he can, so no, it doesn't make any sense that it has to be Hank Pym in this universe, but it was Hank Pym in the comic books. And I don't know too much more about it than that. Whedon wasn't, my memory, and it may be misremembered, is Whedon wasn't in as much of the sort of post-release press and promo as I would have expected. And he looked kind of burnt out every time I did see him. And there's never been any whispers of him working with Marvel again. Whereas I think at the moment, and it's tempting to go, well, he did his bit and he moved on, but he hasn't done vast amounts since, except tried to salvage Justice League. It wasn't entirely his fault it didn't work. Because if I was trying to finish a film Zack Snyder did, I wouldn't hire Joss Whedon to finish it. They're too dissimilar. That strikes me as really stupid, actually, as an idea. But
Though course correcting is the ones that make it a bit more
that's
fun.
what they were trying to do, but they had a bit too much in the. Well, we'll get to that one day, and that's not an easy. It doesn't quite work, and I think that is a clear spoiler for when we get to DC one day. Justice League is a mishmash. It's not as bad as its reputation, but it certainly ain't good. But Joss Whedon hasn't done a lot since this, so it's not that he went off because he was going to do Star Wars, or he wanted to, do this TV show or whatever. Whereas I get the impression now with the Russos, they'd keep him forever if they could. So something broke between man and studio here.
Yeah.
And we're seeing it in the end result, but we're not quite sure how.
Yeah, I would guess it's probably just a general, enthusiasm, though it's probably, telltale signs in certain elements. I think for example, the romance between Hulk and Natasha Romanoff. It's not. As you say, Dave, it's not
the scenes are nice.
Yeah. It's not like the scenes are fine, but we're just scratching our heads as but where did this come from? How did this come? Does this work? I'm not sure that they suit each other as a couple. It's like if there was should we say, a brief flirtation in the previous Avengers film, that almost okay, fine, well, that sets up fans' expectations, and that there's a chance that might work now. But here, it's just there, and you think, where the fuck did this come from? I mean, it would make more sense for Romanoff to hard on for Steve, because I'm spending time with him in Winter Soldier. But
yeah, the two don't seem to kind of mesh up really. It does seem a bit random. I
don't mean this from a looks or snootiness perspective. I really don't. But Natasha Romanoff would not give Bruce Banner a second look. I'm absolutely convinced. But he ain't good looking enough. He just wouldn't appear on her radar. I don't see it.
They already established the fact that she's kind of not interested in that. In any guy, it's almost like she's. I mean, she's flirted with Steve in a playful way, but half the time when she's flirting, she's trying to get what she wants. She's trying to get information.
Yeah.
And it's not, and she's as said in previous Avengers films, lust for children. She's not interested in that.
She can't have them. Yeah.
Yeah. Although she might be why.
Well, we find out during this film, but again, all of that should carry weight, and it doesn't because it's dropped away. And whilst I don't think the film is quite overstuffed as the later two Avengers films. I mean Captain America: Civil War and Avengers 3, really, Infinity War. Whilst it's not as overstuffed, they're still not having the time to put to things. So the flirtation between them isn't fleshed out before all of a sudden they're into each other, and you think, did we miss some signs or something?
Yeah.
Then they're having a conversation outside of the shower about, I should have joined you, and then it was, I can't have children, and then it was, how do you have a baby with me? Because I'm the Hulk. And it's like, we've missed weeks of conversations here. This isn't just a couple of little side conversations we've missed. We've missed a hell of a lot of build-up. And I find it the same with the Maximoff twins as well. I just think it's all very, very rushed. And we're looking at a film that's 141 minutes. So, yeah. And the whole Ultron thing's pulled out of nowhere. And again, I think I've got a problem with this constant semi-resetting of Tony Stark. He's becoming like Shrek. He's learning the same fucking story. Shrek in every single film learnt to be grateful for what he has. And
that's like his character arc. That was it. And again, he learns to be grateful.
And then in the second film, he would learn to be grateful for what he has. And then in the third film, and you get where I'm going with that.
But the second time he does it with Donkey, and then the next time he does it with Puss in Boots.
Well, not only do they have to reset him as a bit of a playboy each time, but they're not doing that as much now. But Tony Stark in Iron Man 3 had to learn, had a bit of post-traumatic stress, and had to learn through the course of the film that he couldn't anticipate every variable. He couldn't protect everyone from every conceivable situation. And by the end of the film, he's learnt it. We get to here, it's exactly the same arc again. Tony is trying to get this sort of fail-safe insurance against any danger. And when we get to Civil War, it'll be the same thing again. I'm getting a bit fed up with it. It's like you've got a great character there, but stop having him learn the same lesson in every film. Either don't have him learn it at all, or have him learn it and then move on. So yeah, actually in the specifics, there's quite a lot of problems here. But
So it's like he's constantly guilty for something, and it feels like he has to overcompensate for that guilt. It's
we're
like,
3 years. We're 3 years on from the Battle of New York at this stage. What's he feeling guilty about now? You know, it's all a bit. I don't know. Maybe this is too much for one man. Maybe it does need two directors, or don't know. Maybe it is conceptually, although it's not the vast number of characters we're going to get to later on. There's enough characters here that not enough consistent thought's been given to each character. So Tony has got this sort of placeholder. He feels responsible that he can't protect the whole world, and it's just this placeholder persona for him because they haven't got time to write something better. But Sokovia, you know, I at least that's a mixture of good and bad, and we'll get to it because I've always got a problem with putting people in danger we don't know. But as soon as I was about to voice that, I actually remembered we see quite a lot of the Sokovians through that action sequence, so it's not so bad. But I think we're all actually saying that the frustration with this film is we're all saying we kind of enjoyed it.
well, it's almost like your opinion of Holmes and Watson. It's like it's not painful, but you know, you kind of wish you enjoy it. Really,
Yeah.
It's like I can't really say I enjoyed it, but then it's like I can't really say I detested it. It's like I might have enjoyed certain moments, and then at the time I just sort of like just watched it.
It's way less than the sum of its parts.
Yeah.
Way less.
I think also probably the ending as well, like the big climax, kind of feels a bit repetitive, and you don't really fit, and they don't see Ultron himself. When you think of him, think, fucking hell, how are they going to take on this guy? By the time he gets to the climactic fight, it doesn't seem that much of a challenge. It's just like an endless zone of robots, and you think, well, okay, well, fine, the Avengers can take care of them, no problem.
It was a little bit Star Wars Episode 1 for me. They weren't as fragile as the droids in that, but it was a bit like that. It was purely weight of numbers that weren't offering any threat whatsoever.
Plus, you have the advantage of surrounding the area where they need to get to.
Yeah.
And like, well, fine. So all you have to do is just fight him off, which is not going to be that much of a problem. You know.
Yeah.
Not in real terms, obviously, but in terms of when you're watching like movie superhero terms, think, oh, okay, well, it's fine. There's loads of them now.
You know, by the time the Russos got to do a proper Avengers film, like all of them, including Thor and the Hulk and everything else, whole structure of the film's totally different. Here we've got we do have sort of an Empire Strikes Back in that we start with a big action sequence off the end of the last one, if you like. But again, it all felt rather over-familiar.
Mm.
It was all similar sort of action beats and shooting. And cutting between the different Avengers, but this time on the ground in a snowy environment. So it all felt a little bit like, I'm not sure he's got anything new to say. But with that, shall we discuss this film sequentially?
Why not?
Why not?
Now, which film was it? Was it the last one where we had a Baron von Strucker tease?
It was Winter Soldier.
He was one of the post-credit sequences. It was Winter Soldier, was it?
Yeah.
Okay. I thought this was going to be something, and it really isn't, is it?
He's in like 2 scenes.
Yeah. They've been raiding Hydra facilities ever since the Winter Soldier, we get the impression. because they drop it in very clunky dialogue as they go through this scene that, you know, that's all of them now, and, you know, we've cut the head off and everything else. This Hydra facility has a scepter, the scepter Loki was using in it, and it has the twins.
Yeah.
Pietro Maximoff, basically Quicksilver, not GTA 4, who is very like, it's one of the few things the Bryan Singer X-Men film does better. Their Quicksilver's way more fun than this one.
I remember the tease because like the wig in the Bryan Singer one and the X-Men one just looked really tacky.
Yeah, it doesn't. Neither of them look good, but here he's got bad highlights, and it just looks like it does. It's very GTA 4. Wanda looks great. They've nailed the look of her, but her voice is well off in this one. But they drop the accent quite quickly over her next couple of appearances. So this is the only time she really sounds like this. The out-of-universe explanation is quite simply, that's stupid, let's not do that anymore. The in-universe explanation is she's working off the grid a lot with Black Widow, and, you know, the influence of her is to sort of teach her to blend in, and if she's going to blend in, she needs to lose that accent.
Yeah. Well, you think it's like she probably lives in America now, so she probably just adopted the American accent.
Yeah. Yeah. Plus, it's an American actress. They never thought of that, did they?
No.
So there's this big sort of action sequence, which is the sort of raid on the facility. So lots of, you know, hero shots of them all.
Oh god, that big hero, that was meant to be like the
Well, when we're looking across them and Hulk's close to the camera.
Yeah, that just looked really bad to me.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah, that looks a bit cheap.
Well, they cut slow motion with it as well. I thought, is this a Paul W.S. Anderson film or something? Suddenly go all slow motion. Yeah, we're aware they're all there at the same time.
It's like screen capture shot. There we are. There.
I know, and they've really dialed up all the lines as well. I did like the language one.
I never got that. I never got why, you know, they'd be like, they find that as a joke. You know, it's like...
Because he's a man from the 1940s.
Well, yeah, so it makes sense for him to say it, but I don't get why they're all mocking him for it. I don't know why that's a big thing. I don't know. Maybe it's just me.
I mean, I got it. I got it just
Yeah.
fine. I thought it was funny. But again, it's the film trying way too hard. Straight away. It's like... That's really all he's particularly good at, Whedon, here. He's particularly good at, you know, interplay and jokes.
Mm.
But we're in the midst of a supposedly fairly tense opening action sequence, and none of the tension is sold. We're straight onto jokes about language.
Well, it's quite a cartoony action scene anyway. 'Cause you got like Cap and everyone flipping in the air, and it, you know, it's one of those action scenes that does not look quite real.
No. And does Bruce Banner put in an earpiece then change, or do they try and cram an earpiece into the Hulk?
Oh, I don't know.
Because they're all chatting to each other, aren't they? Can somebody
Yeah.
take out that bunker? Hulk does it, thanks. You're like, wait, how did you get an earpiece into him?
Osmosis somehow.
I mean, in the
Did it
first
whilst
one,
he was sleeping.
yeah.
I
mean,
would
I
have thought in the first... I think it depends, because if he changes himself, he can control the Hulk more.
Yeah.
So he probably had it in anyway. I'm guessing.
We'll get to that later as well. Funnily enough, I honestly think Hulk's best rendering was in his first appearance. I thought he looked better in the Avengers than any of these films. This looks all right on the small screen, but I remember when I saw it at the cinema, there's a few shots of the Hulk that don't look quite right. And by the time we get to his later appearances, like Thor Ragnarok and stuff like that, I think he looks kind of waxy, kind of plasticky, like they've taken shortcuts in.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, he kind of has that look to him where he does look a little bit, you know, they kind of run out of money.
I don't know. I don't know that it's done with the same quality as the first.
It could be down to
No.
like the sparingness of, like, say, doing it in Avengers, where he's like,
Or maybe.
you know, he isn't in it as much. Whereas
Yeah.
like they use him quite a bit, so that's why it has a overall effect. I don't know. It might be something to do with that.
I mean, he looks all right. He's always animated like perfectly adequately. But when I see him now, I just think he doesn't look. I don't know. There's a level of detail, but there's a level of sort of nuance in the skin gone. It looks kind of waxy.
Yeah, I would agree with you there, Dave. It does kind of... it loses its sheen.
But yeah, you've got this action sequence that no one really gives a shit about, but they're all, it's quite effective at telling us how they work together. And suddenly Stark's back in the suit. He can't do things remotely now. It's just whatever. Iron Man 3 raised more problems than it solved. They get this scepter, but in the midst of it all, the twins are sort of let out, and so obviously because Pietro's so fast, first thing Barton knows about it is he goes to fire something and it's picked out of the air. And Wanda is just messing with their heads terribly. She gets inside Tony's head, and he sees the sort of creatures from the first film and all the Avengers lying dead, or dead and dying.
Yeah.
And again, I wasn't quite sure what that was hinting at. I don't know if that was trying to show him something that has happened, or could happen, will happen, just to mess with his head, just to get him to take the scepter.
Or his worst fear or something.
Are they just showing him his worst fear? Well, in that case, what's Steve's dream about then? Because he just meets with Peggy, and you go, well, that's not a worst fear, is it? Are you Are you trying to show Steve that there's a life beyond this, or that he'd be happier away from crime fighting? I don't know. Thor sees trouble.
You get the sense that Steve's dream is like a temptation, isn't it? It's like
a temptation to do what though? Because he can't just go back to 1945. Can he?
No, that's very true. But I don't know.
Okay, I think I know what you mean though.
If I had to read it as it is, but you're right. I mean, I don't know what exactly they were trying to do, but it's I've interpret the vision. That's like, well, it seems to be a temptation of sorts, but or I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, if you were showing them all some flavour of a dystopian, I mean, you're showing Cap a world where his battle's done.
So is that
but
his
we
fear?
don't. I don't know. I don't know if that's his fear or his desire, or whether you're just trying to tempt him with it, which is exactly what you're saying. Not tempt him in real terms that he can have it, but start to open that up as a desire that I don't want this anymore. I'd have been happier with that. But then later on, Thor's going to see things that we don't know what that's telling us. It's messy. It's really messy. I'm sure this all means something, and I'm sure that there are people who've watched this film who've got it straight away. If there's something to get, they've gone, no, what that's trying to tell us is this.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure. I think it's a sign of, I think it's studio arguing. I think they wanted to, anytime they can get Hayley Atwell back on the screen and evoke the 1940s with Cap, they'll do it. So they're happy to take that. But I don't think they've really thought through what it's for.
It seems rushed.
Yeah, I think it does. But they're able to they apprehend Strucker and they take the scepter, don't
What
they?
a waste! I mean, modern day Nazis. Come on,
I feel your frustration, Chris.
it's like
It is a waste.
he's got a monocle and everything. It's like, oh come on, I don't know, maybe it's just the old fashioned in me, just something a bit of throwback. I don't know.
Sure. It does seem like a total waste.
Yeah, but it's complete wasting. Oh, right, well, he have some role, and then he's in a couple of scenes. He gets a line delivered to him to say, "Well, stop him," and they go, "Well, it's the Avengers." It's like, how can you, kind of well, duh. and then he kind of has a scene with Cap, and he just gets knocked out straight away, and then he's killed off screen.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a strange way to structure a film because the big bad Hydra it appears completely defeated in the first 2 minutes of the film. They've now got an Infinity Stone, and yes, there is some hint at these twins having something, but that's about it. They head home, and it's like celebration time. If they'd stopped there, they've got to build a threat from scratch, starting about 15 minutes into this film. That's strangely structured, it really is. Having said that, I quite like some of the next few bits. They basically head back to the sort of Avengers Central, don't they? The Stark Tower.
Yeah.
And all of this. Sorry, go on.
No, go on. I was just putting sort of got Stark basically sort of working out what to do with taking his Jarvis idea but expanding it, basically to make Ultron essentially. And he works with Banner, yeah.
Again, a bit pulled out of his ass. He learnt this in the last film, that you can't legislate for every single threat. But he's forgotten it already.
So he's had that.
And then he finds
seems very convenient.
There's an intelligence in it. Well, that's handy as well. Effectively, that intelligence basically takes over Jarvis.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things.
And all of that is happening while they're off partying. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, in his mind, he's thinking, I've thought of every way possible to make like a fail-safe type thing where this will happen, and it does. It's like, oh, yeah. Crap. He basically wakes up while he's not there and basically sort of takes over Jarvis and starts like going into the system. Yeah,
but even he has a look through the sort of all the files and he sees the peace in our time thing and he gets the idea that he's got to eradicate humanity. Humanity are the threat. And again, there's some good ideas in that, but it's an idea that's fleshed out in about 30 seconds.
Well, it's basically Cybernet.
From waking up...
it's essentially Cybernet,
From waking up to deciding humans are the threat to taking over Jarvis is less than a minute of screen time. It's Cyberdyne, yeah. Yeah. Skynet you're thinking of.
Skynet, that's the one.
Yeah. Yeah, a little bit. They basically, they preemptively retaliate, effectively, Skynet, don't they? That's what effectively happens. They fire to stop us firing on them, so they have to fire on us, sort of thing. Yeah, it's exactly the same principle, and it's really stupid. But the next bit's okay.
Yeah, because they're having fun.
They're having fun, which is the one thing Whedon's really good at. Although we do see the start of this romance. I mean, she looks wonderful here. I mean, they really do photograph Natasha well here. But all of a sudden, like, Banner's flirting with her, and it's like, what's happening here then?
It always seemed, their romance to me, it always seemed like a bit of an odd pairing. As I say, because of the Winter Soldier, I would pair her more with Steve, with Cap. But I think the previous Avengers kind of movies had kind of tried to kind of like mesh them together and tried to kind of weave a thread of romance between them, as if like she was the only one who can kind of bring him down to earth, as it were. But yeah, I'm a little bit like, okay.
I just thought of like Spec doing this unearned romance. It's like in many ways
really go together.
She's perfect for you. It's like, really? I couldn't really fucking tell. She's the only one who could ever understand you.
Well, in Spectre, you could at least tell where they were getting the general idea from, because you go, well, she's the daughter of an assassin.
Yeah, of course.
And she's been taken all over the world with this, and had to be taught to defend herself. If anyone's going to understand the way James Bond thinks, then it would be her. The execution was bloody awful, but you get the general idea.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, what is Banner? You think, well, he's a bookworm, isn't he?
He's an academic.
Whereas Natasha is she's smart, but she's a get out there and do it, which is completely different. She's very much a cynic.
She's more practical.
I don't see these two together at all. It doesn't work.
They say opposites attract, so you never know.
Well, it's not that. I don't think it's even that we're saying they're not alike. I don't think it's even that. I think it's they just don't fit. They don't fit.
Doesn't it also like what's who's is it? I was going to say Peggy then, but it's who's Banner's love interest?
Betty
Ross. Yeah.
Betty, that was it.
Yeah. Does it kind of like just shit on that idea?
They've just written that film out of existence, haven't they? Really?
They have.
I mean, they haven't, because Thunderbolt Ross turns up again in 2 films' time. 2 films' time, a bit longer than that. No, it is 2 films' time. Yeah. He turns into Civil War. So the film still exists and it's still in continuity, but no one mentions Betty anymore. And you think, well, why not? I mean, it can't be an age thing, because like Mark Ruffalo's like 50 now. There's no reason you couldn't have Liv Tyler there at 42 or whatever she is.
He does like it.
Yeah, he does. Well, sort of.
These Hollywood actors and their genes, I don't know.
He does and he doesn't. I mean, obviously, if you keep your hair and dye it the right colour, it looks okay. But yeah, I mean, he kind of. I do believe that he's that age. It doesn't surprise me. I don't know why Betty Ross has just been written out of all of this. I don't know. I guess, having said that, I complain all the time about overstuffing these films. If you tried to cram Betty Ross in as well, that might be a bit difficult.
I mean, not saying that they have to. I mean, you don't cram like Gwyneth Paltrow or what's her face, Jane.
Pepper.
Yeah,
or Jane Foster. Yeah.
Yeah, or Jane Foster. They just mention it, and it's not a case of like, oh, we have to see it. We have to have scenes with her in. It's just the idea that that's his girl. That's the love of his life, and the only reason why he can't be with her is because he's the Hulk, and he's still searching for that cure, or whatever, or try so he can actually.
But she's still out there. She's still a bit of what's driving him forward. Yeah.
And it's just so he just kind of like spits in the face of that, and probably that maybe like piss off like fans as well, thinking, like, hang on, this is fucking right.
What are Banner's goals if you take her away as well?
Yeah.
Because by this point, he's got this. The character, as told in this story, wants Natasha. Yeah, that's fair enough. But he sort of doesn't want her to because he thinks it's too fucking risky. Because, apparently it's because, he shags at 200 beats a minute. So, can't take the risk. So, if he's not going to be romantically driven, I sometimes wonder how and why he's there. But because he's scared of letting this beast out most of the time anyway. Even though he's got a bit more control over it these days. So it's all rather confusing, but it's a well done scene. I mean, less so on the small screen, but on the big screen there was a real allure there in her and the way she was talking to her. She knows how to work a camera, certainly.
Yeah.
And all the funny stuff that follows is good fun. They're just trying to lift Thor's hammer, which is funny.
Yeah, it's in that sort of really good, like, casual sense that, like, they're not really acting, really. They're just literally just being themselves, having a laugh. But I do love the fact that when it comes to Steve, it does move just a little bit.
It's tiny, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
I remember reading a plot synopsis or something that said he moves it a bit. And I'm thinking, my first thought was that's going to be kind of cheesy. And then when I saw it was almost imperceptible.
But it's the look on Hemsworth's face, though, isn't it?
The tiny amount he moves that is perfect. Because Hemsworth's face is a picture. But then Chris Hemsworth's been the best thing in these films for a long time. Don't think Thor necessarily is, but Hemsworth is. It's all good fun, this. Because the overall film isn't that great, whenever I see these sorts of things, I do think of things like Ocean's 12, where I think they're more interested in meeting up for a laugh than making a film.
Yeah.
But actually, it's not that bad. There's a pretty cohesive plot there. I did find it funny, fucking Rhodey trying to tell his story and no one gives a shit because they're the Avengers.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that's not.
And then he goes and tells people who aren't Avengers, and they all.
He has to go and find some other people, and then it does work, and he's like, boom, and all of that's pretty good. Stanley's cameo's a little bit over the top, but it's funny. Really pissed off the tiniest amount of drink and Excelsior and all that shit. It's not bad. It's not bad. The only problems I've had so far really are that opening action sequence wasn't great. That sort of Iron Legion Tony's got of all those robots I'm still not sure about. It's like, how much of... It's still this problem I had with Iron Man 3. How much is Iron Man, the man, and the suit as a combination? How much is it of a fleet of everything, but it's basically your intelligence and thought processes? And how much is the man not actually that important? And the more and more suits, costumes, robots we see that Tony Stark isn't physically in, the more it cheapens all of it, frankly. So I'm not fond of that. But at this point, I was quite happy because this sequence was funny. And actually, all we'd heard so far, I think all we heard was a little bit of Ultron's voice kind of lazily because it was like he's just waking up, really. You felt like a little hint of coming threat. So I was quite happy at this point. The party gets interrupted by Ultron, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's like... I think the party's finished, but they're just like, crashing out, and then Ultron comes along.
Yeah.
Which is like a big part of the trailer when he's like quoting Pinocchio. So, I've got no strings. There's been okay with that, isn't it? Yeah.
In the trailer,
There are no
it was
strings
pretty
on
much,
me.
Yeah, there are no strings on me. Like in the trailer, that was.
I nearly
pretty
put
much
that
the
on our
focus.
trailer, but I changed my mind. It's not going
I
to be.
I think you made the right decision there, Dave.
Yeah, I nearly put that on our trailer, but yeah. This is okay, but every time the action kicks off, and it will really be obvious when we get to the claw stuff later, I'm not that thrilled by it.
Yeah.
It all kicks off here, and I'm just like, I don't care. I don't know who this guy really is. He's just come out with a load of cliched dialogue. We don't really know what he wants, and we're underway straight away.
By the time they tried to introduce him, I kind of feel that this film is quite busy. Like there's enough going on without Claw. I mean, I do love Serkis as an actor. I think he's amazing, and all those innovations in the field of makeup is just superb. But I just kind of feel like, as good as he is here, we don't need him. It's too busy already.
No, I mean they try to write it into the plot because basically that's straight where we go next. After this battle, he takes the scepter and he goes to
Sokovia.
Recruit. Yeah, Sokovia. Does he go there first? No, he recruits the Maximoffs first, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And then he goes to see Claw. And it doesn't say Wakanda. I don't think it is, but it's in Africa somewhere.
Yeah, that's kind of not revealed at this stage.
He goes to Sokovia, recruits the Maximoffs, and then he kills off Strucker. But we don't see it. We see it like in a little.
Yeah. I don't
photo.
remember it. Oh right, okay, brilliant.
Yeah, we don't see it. It's just like going like,
Well, it never stuck. I've seen this film countless times, and I could never remember that's what happened.
Yeah.
All right, fair enough. So then he goes to get. He wants vibranium, doesn't he? And Claw is kind of a black market trader in it. Mm-hmm. And at this stage, we don't truly know how much vibranium there is in the world. It's meant to be a very rare substance. We find out a little different in a few films' time.
See, it's just. I think when you compare Andy Serkis' character Claw here to how he is in Black Panther, you just think, fucking hell, like, I mean, he's basically playing the same character, but it's used so much better in Black Panther.
Yeah, I would agree.
Like, in Black Panther, he's clearly having fucking time and has memorable lines and like gets memorable.
He's got memorable lines. He's funny. He's got like his arm.
It's so much better. Isn't it? So much better.
Here, it just stood out. It was almost like a cameo. Given to somebody needlessly famous. Just judging on the size of his role in this film, Andy Serkis is too familiar to us.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It was like, why have they got Andy Serkis to do this? And you go, and then it was pointed out he's a Black Panther antagonist, and it was around here they cast Chadwick Boseman.
Yes.
Again, for years down the line, but they cast him, and I thought, oh well, that's it then. He's obviously going to be a big time antagonist in that film. We'll get to that.
We'll get there in the end.
All this build-up was completely wasted. Marvel don't get a lot wrong. No, they're bound to get some stuff wrong.
I'd say this is like one of their main kind of scripts, really.
It's not
even a screw up, but just a little bit where they go, yep.
It is really.
Just a brain fart.
But the action sequence here, I fucking hate. It starts with really shit banter between like Stark and fucking Ultron. So it's lots of Junior and all that shit. And it's got but this whole action sequence coming up has that kind of all those little Whedon things I don't like. Putting silly little funny bits in the humour, like where in the action, like where Pietro tries to grab like Thor's hammer and gets taken with it. Never found that funny. Where Barton, hits someone behind him, and I just think that's been done to death. It was done to death in the Blade films as well, years before this. So I just didn't really like any of this. And really, the one thing that rescues this whole section of the film, obviously, is she gets inside Banner's head, Wanda. But before we get to that, it's worth mentioning what does happen to Claw here. He loses an arm. He takes.
Oh, he's got an arm off.
He's got an arm off.
Yeah, you're telling me is that?
And Raxi does not bleed to death. Like he's not like.
No.
I'm sure that'll be fine. He's almost apologetic, Ultron, because he cuts it off in a bit of a temper. He's just filled his bank account. So now Claw is super rich and has one arm, which is effectively, I think, his origin story. But yeah, a bit of a waste for a character that ended up wasted in Black Panther as well. Although, there you go.
It's almost like we didn't really need this bit. Like, really, we could have just reintroduced him in Black Panther, and then that was it.
Well, actually,
we need all we need
respects,
to know from Black Panther, really.
It seems to be a big way. Yes, I agree with that. But the whole sequence seems to be a way to get the Hulk going mental.
Yeah,
that's what this is.
It's setting up for the Hulkbuster scene,
which was in all the trailers, and you know the bit where the sort of bigger version of the Iron Man helmet sort of closes over his head and all that. This was good though. I had fun with this. This was and you can tell he's immediately got something in his head because his eyes are red. The Hulk's eyes are bloodshot, really, and all the skin around his eyes is kind of puffy. He's kind of like he's not of his own mind at all. And he's raging around, and of course Stark goes after him with Veronica, which is the sort of space-based suits, the Hulkbuster suit. And they have a big fight on the streets of Africa somewhere.
I get, like, it had lots of cool stuff. Like, I like the idea, like, the suit, all different Iron Man suits to deal with the Hulk and things like that. And there was parts of it that was quite funny when he's, like, sort of bashing him, go sleep, go sleep, go sleep.
Yeah, and sorry.
Yeah. Part. I mean, like, you know, parts of me were thinking there's the shades of like Man of Steel, where they're just plowing through. But it does try and like sort of make a point of like, oh, is this area populated? Okay, and he does save the people and lift and whatnot. So, but it was like, okay, this is just like needless destruction. And I kind of, I don't know. Again, it's like the entire film. It's like I kind of just sort of zone out. I just think, oh, this is alright then. Rather than like thinking, oh my god, that's amazing. And I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's just like my...
I think it's
my
just because
like...
the film's not going well at this point. It's a decent action sequence at the end of a not so good action sequence. At the end of a load of setup for a character in Ultron that we don't really have any real insight into at the moment, other than he's effectively a programming error.
So you think possibly that the film could have done with less action and more character build up, so the action means something?
Yeah, that's always the case. I think they see, I think as much as the next two team-up films are better, I think when they were planning things like Civil War, that set piece at the airport would have been almost the first thing into their minds. And I think there is a degree of reverse engineering around action sequences. I think they wanted the Hulk and Iron Man to have a fight.
Yeah.
And most of the build-up, from the point where Ultron announced himself to then, has been to get to there. I think there's an element of... I don't know how much they thought of the forward Hulk storyline, because Hulk obviously goes missing at the end of this film. And the next time we see him is Thor Ragnarok. And I know that Feige and Ruffalo have talked a couple of times about how they're not going to do solo Hulk films, so what they've done is talk about what the arc for the character would be if they could, and try to put them in here where they can. And I am wondering if this is part of that they actually wanted Hulk to go at one of his colleagues in a hugely populated area as character development for like Banner, or to give Banner something to think about afterwards. I'm not sure, but there's still a part of me that thinks it was just a cool shot for the trailer, wasn't it?
Yeah, I get that impression as well. There's a lot of sort of scenes. It's one of those films where the trailer is better than the film. Like all the cool shots, all the cool action sequences, and all the hero shots and the lines. There are no strings on me in the trailer, and then the rest of the film is just like... That is a cool
line, and it's put in slightly discordant as well, isn't it? There are no strings. So you got that, you got the party where they're trying to lift the hammer, you got Hulk and Iron Man having a fight. Yeah, you can see how you cut a really good trailer for this, can't you?
You really can, but I kind of get the impression that the trailer's better than the film.
Yeah,
well, so everyone was really excited by the trailer as well, by seeing the shots of it. I was like, oh my god, this is going to be amazing.
Yeah,
I always
definitely.
thought
Especially
it was-
having Spader as the villain as well. You know, this really versatile actor, and you just think, oh,
You
just
know
feel a
what
bit
I thought?
shortchanged by it all.
You know what I thought was the problem with Spader is he's got a really good voice, but I think you lose something when you hide against that tinny robot aesthetic. 'Cause
Sure.
he's almost like doing like a Darth Vader, where it's like through metal. And I think that kind of just shaves off the quality of the delivery. And
I thought the CG of the final Ultron looked shit as well.
Oh, well, he's got
looked
Transformer
really
mouth.
Yeah, kind of like shiny and waxy. The CG's not bad. The CG's never particularly bad in Marvel, but it's not always absolutely tip top either. It's always like okay.
Yeah.
And I thought Ultron was okay.
I just kept thinking he's got, that Optimus Prime mouth where it kind of like, it's like metal, but it still moves like lips.
Well,
Yeah, there's still a bit like metallic aspect to it.
I mean, I don't know how far we are into the film at this point, but, half hour, 40 minutes, whatever it might be. But I already feel like it's mis-selling.
Yeah.
Age of Ultron. We've had the first 10 to 15 minutes of the film that had fuck all to do with him. And now since then, it's been like, he's being set up as a single film antagonist. It's completely obvious that's the case. There is something to do with this Infinity Stone that's going to matter at some point. We think probably, but Age of Ultron just gave it this epic feel coming out of the Avengers. Whedon's return after 3 years, a really good Phase 2 by and large. Certainly the 2 to 3 films that led into this. Well, 2 films really, isn't it? Certainly the 2014 releases. You thought, my God, they're on an upswing, and here we go, the epic second Avengers film. And actually, it's a total so what storyline with a so what antagonist. And that's really the problem. And things get pulled out of their arse because they're team up films and you don't have time to develop anything properly. So the next thing is we find out Barton's got a family.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a bit random, isn't it?
Well, it's great, it's lovely, and going forward, I think that adds something because I'll bet a fortune that in the 4th Avengers film they've been killed in the snap.
Probably.
I would say definitely.
It's pretty clear from the trailer that very few, if any, of them have survived. So he's now heartbroken.
He's going to come back in and be like,
the idea of him as a family man, as he's a character that's never been developed beyond his attachment to Romanoff.
No.
I think is a really good thing. But there's just something very abrupt that you only get in team-ups. It's a bit like in Civil War, where you open a van door and there's Ant-Man, and it's suddenly like, oh, Ant-Man's here. All right, away we go then.
Okay.
And it's the same here. It's like, here's my family. All right, brilliant. I just think there's something very abrupt to that sort of thing. I
think it's like, it does add something to his character that he is a bit more like, has a bit of a private aspect to him. I've got me running around saving the world kind of stuff, but when I'm at home, I'm like in the middle of nowhere in the cabin with my wife and kids, and that's how I like it. So the idea of him actually go back to his wife's house, it's like it's like in the middle of nowhere without any technology, away from Ultron, while they're trying to figure what to do.
But they'll still have internet and stuff, and basically they've told us early in the film, Ultron's effectively in the internet.
Yeah,
that's how he can skip from one being to another. I mean, they've set up a problem they can't solve. Basically, he's omnipotent and omnipresent. Ultron should be like everywhere in everything. As the premise on which the film has presented him, he would be unbeatable, unless you switched off the world's internet. Because the guy is everywhere and would be able to find them everywhere. So none of that makes sense. But I do like the fact that it adds something to Barton. They've even thought through what sort of environment he lives in. He doesn't live in a New York apartment or something, and that's right and proper. And they've given him a family of like real feeling people. Trying to think of the lady who plays her wife. She was also in
ER.
Oh, Linda Cardellini. She was in those. She was in those Scooby-Doo films, but she was also in. You've heard me talk about Ben Mendelsohn in a TV series called Bloodline before. Bloodline was about 4 siblings, and she was the sister. There were 3 brothers and a sister, and the eldest sibling was Danny, and that was Ben Mendelsohn, and Linda Cardellini was like the sister. Carl Chandler was one of the other ones, and I don't think the other guy is really that well known. And they've just cast a real person. So I like this, but I don't. Nothing Ultron makes any sense. They've rushed it. They've picked one of their legacy characters in Ultron and tried to make a film around it that doesn't make any sense at all. You do have to like introduce everybody really abruptly. So Claw came out of nowhere and disappeared just as fast. And it's the same with Barton's family. That said, I really like the change of pace. I really like this sort of farmhouse. I kind of like this. The film needed this for a second.
Yeah, it's kind of like a breathing point, really, isn't it? I must say that was kind of like, if any scene stands out for me, it will be the scene where they go to see Clint's family.
This is like the bit where they all have to have a chat and kind of...
It gives you a bit of time to breathe, doesn't it? I think?
Well, it's kind of like get the bearings and kind of like, say their piece about things. It's like, at this point, they're probably like at each other's throats because they're pissed off at Tony for basically making Ultron. So you have to like, it's coming to that terms of like getting the team back together, getting back on the same page.
Oh, and obviously Tony later will need a new assistant, so he doesn't have Jarvis. He has Friday, an Irish female.
Is Man Friday or Woman Friday?
Yeah. Okay. So what have we got from here? Thor disappears because he's been having those images. So he goes off to see like Selvig or something. We don't get anything more from that really at all. It's again.
No, it doesn't really go very far, does it?
Yeah, well, apparently I can't remember which way round it is. I think Whedon didn't want that stuff in, the studio did, and they've ended up with this half-assed halfway house.
Mm.
I mean, to be fair, if a studio can create this much havoc and still get something as watchable as this, where Justice League has somebody with a John Major top lip and, two completely incompatible storylines in it, you think, well, Marvel on their worst day is still pretty good, aren't they? But
I think competent is the word you're looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this film, it's competent, although we can see there's issues here. Nick Fury arrives. Now, what does Nick give them apart from, like, being pleased to see him? Anything or nothing? I can't remember what...
He just comes and gives a pep talk, really, doesn't he?
Yeah, I mean, I can't see what he was there for, apart from, we got Samuel L. Jackson under a contract still.
Well,
he
comes back with the old, hangar, aircraft hangar. But I can't remember what he actually does.
All right, fair enough. Earlier in the film, Barton got injured, and they've got this sort of skin creating technology that one of their sort of doctors was using. And basically, at this point, Ultron gets hold of her because he wants her to build him a body. And I just thought this was pushing it a bit too far.
So it mustn't be that Ultron he can't get an internet. He can only sort of like build robot bodies that he can actually flitch into, essentially.
Well, he could switch from drone to drone before. You shot one drone, he was suddenly a different one.
Yeah.
I thought he was effectively in the internet, but maybe not.
I mean, you'd think that, because that's what the assumption you have, but...
well, it actually makes less sense if he isn't. You think, well, he's in this closed loop here, or whatever. So basically, he is now trying to get... using the scepter, which has a infinity gem in it. We don't know what that gem does or why, but it's magic, and if you fire some stuff in it, it will build him a body. And then Ultron will upload himself into it, and he'll have effectively a permanent form. But at the same time, the twins are there, and Wanda can read that he has, because she can read minds. Again, bit like Vision later on, not a completely consistent skill set, but she can read minds at times. And apparently, she realizes that he wishes harm on the Earth. I think she gets an image of like some kind of asteroid smashing into Earth. Well, that's what it looks like, but I think it's meant to be some explosion on Earth. That's going to be Ultron wiping us out. So the Maximoffs turn against him.
Yeah, because that'll
But
be
he-
his
but-
plan of lifting up that is it Sokovia and then dropping it. That was it.
Yeah. Oh, that's what that would be. They take it to quite a height, don't they?
Mm.
I never linked that, even though it's bloody obvious. Okay. So the Maximoffs have turned against Ultron, and then the Avengers basically need to go and take this body back. I can't remember how they learn about this body, but they go after it on the streets of some city somewhere in the
They
Far
figure
East.
out. I think they sort of like. I think Dr. Chow gives them a heads up. She's not entirely hypnotized by,
Yeah.
or something along those lines. And then,
And then it's a big straight through the streets, and there's something too comfortable about this, and I think it's because Whedon has to get so many quips in that you immediately undercut tension when people can talk to each other very calmly at racing speed on bikes.
yeah,
So there's a bit where she's on a bike racing against traffic at hell of a speed, and she's going, "Always picking up on after you guys," and she says that at the
seems he picked
calmest
up a
speaking
shield
volume.
after it's been lost on the.
Yeah, but she says it at the calmest speaking volume of all. I wasn't finding any of this particularly exciting,
Mm.
and I don't know why. Because it's the Avengers doing what the Avengers do. I think half of it is I'm not remotely interested in this Ultron character, and this all seems really contrived. Build me a body, really? I thought I know they've got a little bit of technology beyond us, but really. So there's this whole business of trying to get this. What is it? It's kind of almost like a big coffin, isn't it? That's got this artificial body building inside it that Ultron is effectively going to upload his mind into. So they need to steal this.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. They're trying to steal it off a. Is it a lorry, basically?
Yeah, it's a
Kind of
lorry
truck?
that
Yeah.
Ultron makes fly because jets, and then they manage to get it onto one of their crafts, but Black Widow gets captured by Ultron.
Right. Then what?
And it's also, you got like the bit on the subway train where Cap and the Romanoffs try and stop the subway train because they have a fight with Ultron. Ultron kind of basically causes it to go off the rails and non-stop. So it's where the Romanoffs start to save people.
Right. Yeah, the upshot of all of this though is they get hold of that casket, get it back to like wherever it needs to go. I'm assuming it's like Avengers Tower. And Tony wants to have a sort of another go turning it into something. And I just think nobody in this film is fucking learning anything. And it's just kind of annoying. So he uploads Jarvis into it, doesn't he? Into the body. So that's effectively the beginnings of Vision, but they can't get it to like work properly. And effectively, Thor comes in, summons lightning, and basically aims that at the box, and out pops Vision. Which, in the context of this film, I hated this character. It's not been so bad in the films that have followed because they've played up the sort of English gentleman side of him and things like that and made him kind of funny. But in this film,
Like, not quite natural. He doesn't quite know how to fit in with everything.
he doesn't fit with everything. Again, it's pulled out of nowhere. We've got this new character that wasn't even thought of 2 fucking screen minutes ago. And when we get to it in a while, he's ridiculously overpowered. I mean, the Ultron of this film is absolutely unbeatable. He can just do everything. So it wasn't great. It was nice where he sort of sees everyone and then forms himself a cape and things like that to fit in, and they don't know what to make of him, and then trying not to touch him or bother him. There's things I like about it, but it's effectively Jarvis in a sort of quasi-human form. Sort of.
And now it looks like Paul Bettany,
And it looks like Paul Bettany.
but with a red face.
But with a red face.
So where do we go from there? We're building towards the final act now because they've got to go and sort of rescue Natasha and basically go and stop whatever's going to happen in Sokovia. And I don't know really where Sokovia comes from in all of this. I don't know why Sokovia particularly. Do you?
I've no idea. I think it's just like a place.
Pick a place.
Yeah.
Yeah, literally pick a location. Let's go there.
It's just like, because bearing in mind, to us, the viewer, it's a made-up place anyway. So it's like, who gives a shit? If it was London, we'd go, fucking hell, what are they doing?
Yeah.
But anyway.
I guess given what actually happens, well, I don't know, that doesn't stop films completely destroying cities anyway. But there's like less repercussions from that. It's like if you completely just destroy a fictional place, well, no one's going to go, oh, fucking hell. Well, you can't go to London now or whatever, like you still go to New York or London or LA or...
Okay, fair enough. But the whole point is he's going to lift the capital city skywards, drop it, and it will cause, it's like an asteroid hitting or something. It's going to destroy the Earth. Banner gets Romanoff out. And he's like, our battle's done, let's get out of here.
Yeah.
She kisses him and then pushes him off the side of something just so he hulks out. That was a ropey effect in the cinema, where he jumps back up as the Hulk and lands. That looks terrible. It's all right on the small screen, though. But again, he's got control of the Hulk, even though he's been forced into it.
Yeah.
It's little things like that I just think the film's gone, oh, whatever. And it's just a tight, oh, whatever.
Yeah, as he's falling, oh, shit, I better do it myself for...
Yeah, halfway down he's gone, oh, right,
yeah. I had to think quickly.
And here we go into a very, very long action sequence. I don't know if I've got the patience to talk through every beat of it, really. They're lifting this thing, ready to drop it. And then they're all fighting these endless drones of Ultron's army, which again is Star Wars Episode 1 standard. There are helicarriers arriving at some point with various sort of shield people to evacuate people. Pietro's killed by a bullet at some point. I think he's shielding Hawkeye. And I didn't care. Didn't like the character. Wasn't interested. Couldn't care. He
built up like this kind of like not tension, but this rivalry between the two. Like they kept sort of taunting each other, so there was always going to be that dynamic, and he ends up actually saving him.
Right.
There's like
he gives. I mean, I cringed. He gives Wanda a pep talk at one point. If you go out there, you are an Avenger.
Yeah.
And I cringed.
I have a bow and arrow. This doesn't make sense.
I on first viewing, I cringed at that. I just thought that is one of the laziest fucking pep talks I've ever heard. I've never liked that anyway. I've talked about it before. You watch anything where, I don't know, an army are getting riled up before battle. Our names will echo in eternity and all that kind of shit. I've always hated that.
This is Sparta.
I hate it. And this is a smaller, quieter version of the same thing. And I think, what are they trying to achieve with this? Are they trying to pep up the audience as well? Are they trying to get us going, yeah, come on, get out there and get her?
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean...
It's a poorly delivered speech that wouldn't do anything to anyone, and it's to a character we don't care about.
What? The thing that gets me about those sort of things is no one ever says lines like, you're an Avenger. Even the Avengers, even if you took them literally, I bet none of them rarely refer to themselves as Avengers.
No,
and it's like I can imagine the meeting after she decides to join them and everyone's going we didn't approve this.
Well, I mean,
Clint said it was okay. Everyone's like, really?
Yeah, because he said at one point, I'll get back out there because it's my job, and I suddenly thought, job? Do they get paid for this then?
Yeah, hold on a minute.
How does this actually work? And I thought, the film's not taking me. I'm sat here thinking about the contractual arrangements of the Avengers.
How do they get paid?
I'm honestly sat there
If only if he said duty.
Are they there on a 2-year contract? Is it a rolling contract? And at the end, when Steve goes Avengers and it cuts out, I'm going, wait, but when did they decide they were going to use that? Because in the first film where he says Earth's mightiest heroes, he looks embarrassed, Tony Stark. He goes, Avengers, type thing. That's what we call ourselves, kind of. Bit embarrassing,
Also, the film ends on the shittest lineup as well.
I
think-
know. I know. I was expecting fucking Zippy from Rainbow to be one of them. Yeah.
Zip.
Zippy, George and Bungle, Sooty and Sweep, fucking Metal Mickey,
Rosie and Jim.
Rod, Jane and Freddy,
Oh no!
and Vision.
Morph and Vision.
Yeah.
And Bungle.
Oh, wouldn't you love it if Morph was an
And
event?
Sound and Vision.
Yeah, it does. But joking aside, I'm being funny, but I mean it. At this point in the film, I was genuinely thinking about the Avengers' contractual arrangements,
It was so boring.
which means I was bored. I don't
The
like
life outside the film.
I don't like pep talks because I sometimes think. I mean, in employment, pep talks only tend to work on the very inexperienced or not very bright. I mean, I remember my father was a salesman, and years into his career, he took a job that was a bit beneath him, and he was round a lot of very young salesmen and women, and they used to try and give him pep talks. But my dad sat there at like 50 odd years of age, and he was like, he'd say to me, "The problem is that isn't going to work on me." And I kind of think with stuff like this, there's a proportion of the audience that's getting pumped about it. And most of us are just like, oh, get on with it.
No, it kind of goes over our heads.
I don't care. And this action sequence goes forever, and it's far too linear. It's just basically a slow rising city. I just didn't enjoy it. I didn't enjoy any of it.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not one to complain about, like, climactic actions. I know it's not your thing, Dave, but but as I said before in the film, I do generally start to zone out in the action in this time round.
Yeah, but you'll get an experience like me. You are. You're getting an experience like I do.
I mean, I did feel it a bit repetitive. Like, it was just like, and
it's still rising, and it's still rising, and they're going to try something else, and it's still rising.
Like, I kind of like forgot which part are we at now. Like, are we, like, are they killed all the Ultron bots? Oh no, there's more. Okay.
But there was also an element of they were trying to build in. I just felt like my intelligence was being a little bit insulted. There was just an element in the film. They were having conversations about whether they sacrificed the people there or not. And you think, well, it's lovely to try and bring in these kind of like debates and shades of grey. They do it quite well, in my opinion, in things like Civil War. Certainly for a PG-13 film that's overstuffed anyway. I think they do a pretty good job of going, this is Cap's point of view, this is Tony's point of view, and there's merit in both. Here, you think, well, you must think we're fucking idiots. Do you honestly think the audience think that you're going to sacrifice that city? You're not. You're not. There's no way you are, so why waste our time with it?
I was thinking, like, how the fuck are they legitimately gonna do it? Like, other than do like a Superman and like returns and just like lift it up into orbit and just send it to space.
Yeah.
Because obviously you think, well, that thing has to come down at some point. And
and there is some interest in the sort of mechanics of what's happening, certainly. But what I mean is, we've had a pep talk to a couple of the major characters who are brand new, so we don't really care. So she can go out there or not go out there. I really don't give a shit. Where we've got, will these people die on a city we don't know? At least we have seen some of them. I've seen it done worse, but it wasn't done that well. And then they try and sell us this moral dilemma of the many versus the few. And genuinely think we're going to buy into, well, they'll have to just let the people in that city die. Well, that goes against everything a Marvel superhero is. A superhero film is. It's not going to happen, is it?
Yeah.
So I just felt like my time was being wasted. It was just it was overlong and not that exciting. And it's not that picturesque either. Sokovia itself looks like the grottiest of like Eastern Europe. It might as well be like it might as well be Chernobyl or something.
I was going to say Hull, but yeah, sure.
That, isn't it?
Chernobyl or Hull, potato.
Or Salisbury.
Actually,
Double chalk free.
I've been to Hull City Centre and it's actually perfectly nice. But yeah.
Wasn't it like a city
I've never been to Hull, even though I mock it.
All the money's gone into the town centre, so apparently some of the suburbs aren't that nice, but the town's okay.
I've never been either, but I would like to visit.
Would you really? It's on. It's on
apparently,
the
it's
bucket
City of
list.
Culture. Apparently, it won the award.
Well, this is it.
I'm not sure
Are we
what
doing
culture
something right?
it has, but
English culture,
no,
multicultural.
It
Why
was
not?
fine when I went there anyway. But yeah, so it wasn't the most attractive set piece, full stop. And all the little dilemmas and ideas they were trying to sell to us weren't really dilemmas. Well, that's not going to happen, and I wouldn't worry about it. But they do shatter it and stuff. People do die, because obviously we wouldn't get civil war if they didn't. But obviously it was looking at being either a worldwide travesty or a localized massive tragedy, and it was kind of neither. And of course it was going to be kind of neither. Hulk has managed to get into a Quinjet at one point. I can't remember what that was about. There was what were they trying to fly away with there? He jumped in there to stop something because someone came flying out of it. That was an Ultron, wasn't it? There was an Ultron flying that plane. The Quinjet Hulk Nix.
That's the one, yes.
So yeah, he flies off and then refuses to speak to anybody. So no one knows where Hulk is at the end of this film. Vision meets the very last Ultron and just talks about what an unusual species humans are, and says I was born yesterday and all that. I couldn't get that excited by it by this stage. That's more or less it, isn't it? The Avengers get themselves a new base, the one we're used to seeing in all the later films, sort of upstate.
Yeah, the ones we've seen so far.
Thor goes to Asgard to do some more book learning on everything that's happened. Stark says something about tapping out for a while. Barton goes home to do his wife.
Goes home to his children.
And that leaves Steve and Natasha ready to train the new Avengers from children's ITV. What a Poundland Iron Man in Rhodey.
Oh, that's a bit harsh.
Vision, who's been alive for about 24 hours.
New sound of Vision.
Some guy with no powers but some wings.
They are kind of literally split down the middle, aren't they? Literally.
Well, I mean, Wanda's very powerful,
Set
obviously.
A and Set B.
yeah, but kind of new as well, and
Who?
Wanda.
Yeah.
But it's also just like you've got no one there who's that established. You got no big names left apart from Cap. And it's like, well, Thor's buggered off.
Yeah.
Iron Man's saying he's buggered off.
And Rhodey is what you get if you can't get Iron Man, isn't it?
Yeah.
Iron Man Mark II.
Well, literally, because that was based on the Mark II armour.
Quite literally, Mark II.
Yeah, and that's it. And it finishes on... And I remember it getting a big laugh in the cinema. Don't know why. Where he went, Avengers, and as he goes to say assemble, it cuts out. I don't know why that's meant to be a big
wasn't
thing.
assembled in the trailers?
I don't know if it was in the trailers, but he goes to say Avengers Assemble, and it cuts out on
It
Assemble.
chops out, yeah.
And the audience I was with fell about like it was the funniest thing ever.
Well, I guess maybe because they don't really assemble, do they? Because they're literally they're decadent and divided. They're divided, so they don't really assemble, I guess.
I don't
And
know.
they're not assembling in the way they want.
Or maybe they just feel like they had slacks in and properly enjoyed themselves.
I've missed
Yeah,
the
probably.
joke, whatever it was. I have missed that joke. But anyway, so that's it.
This is if you were watching the film back in 2015.
I mean, I know.
Please let us know.
I know Avengers Assemble was kind of their catchphrase. Yeah, I get that, and it cut it off in the middle. But like, I don't know. It's like not like
maybe it's because like the previous one was Avengers Assemble. Like in the UK, it was called that. So that was kind of like a little dig at that.
What, like you twatty Brits?
Yeah, I mean, do you know what I mean? That's all.
I wouldn't blame them. I refuse to call it that because the trouble is, not only did they change the title, which I thought was stupid, but they changed it to something so inelegant. Avengers Assemble sounds awful as a title.
Avengers Disassembled.
Well, it should have just been Marvel's the Avengers. If you're worried about people thinking it's John fucking Steed.
Yeah, I think it was just to avoid
No
copyright,
one would have
wasn't it,
ever
really?
thought
So.
that. You've got marketing campaigns as well.
Iron Man and Friends, there you are.
Yeah,
How
about Super Friends?
Super. Yeah, I going into that, I knew it was DC, but I thought, well, you guys are super, so.
Thank you very much.
I'm super. Thanks for asking.
Super. Like for
So
asking.
mid credits, Thanos opens a locker and says, "Not me, I just wash and go." It was very like the wash and go advert.
He does look very good. Oh,
He reaches in, grabs the Infinity Gauntlet, and says, "I'll just do it myself then." And 3 years later, he did. So I don't know what but he must have just put that on his hand and then just gone off for 3 years.
We don't even see him get any more stones. It's not like a build up. It's like, oh, he's got one. He's got another one now. It's like literally just like fine. And 3
When he
years
turns
later,
up, he's got one. Yeah.
and in Space for Film, he gets them all.
He should get a second, yeah. Oh well.
oh well.
So yeah, it's one of those films. Just as final thoughts from me, every time I watch it, I kind of enjoy it just fine. It's all right. It's the weakest team up by a distance, including Captain America: Civil War. By a distance, I mean it's just so much weaker than any of the rest of the team ups. Everything there is kind of all right. Everyone's pretty good in it, but something's not working. There's logic gaps here and there that aren't horrific. They aren't like, oh my god, but they are. Something's not right there.
Yeah.
All the way through, something's not right there. Why are those two there? What does that mean?
I just think that the heart wasn't in it, for whatever reason.
Yeah, it feels like The Dark Knight Rises in that regard, and that's the only way I'd ever liken those two films because they're so different in tone and idea. But you know, it's at the end of a filmmaker's path with a property. Now, albeit it was only 2 films, but if he was that involved in all the Phase 2 stuff, he might have exhausted himself before he got here. And I think also we saw it in Phase 1 with some of the actors, that they thought they were more important than they were. So Edward Norton, lauded Hollywood actor, says, I want to rewrite the script and I want this final cut and I want it to do this and I want this much money for the next film. And they say, bye then. Terrence Howard, they said, well, we want to cut your salary. No, I'm not having it. Right, well, bye-bye then. And I think there's probably an element, we can't know for certain, but there's an element of that with Whedon as well, that, he has produced the Avengers for them. It's an unprecedented smash, and I don't just mean in money. I mean, I think it was the highest grossing superhero film at that time. But there've been a couple of higher grossing films and so on. But just in terms of, capturing the zeitgeist, it changed comic book films, the Avengers. It just changed, we thought they were all going to be like, the Dark Knight going forward, and that's not what they are anymore. He goes into Phase 2 and, he's on the set of Guardians of the Galaxy helping make decisions and stuff like that. And I think it probably was a rude awakening to him when he got to this film and they said, we want this scene in, and he tried to say no and found out he didn't have complete creative control. And when he wanted to take things out and they insisted on putting them in and vice versa. I think this is a man who had not as much control as he thought he would have, and he's not enjoying himself here. And I think the end result shows that. But Bad Marvel, with a couple of exceptions, are the very worst they've done, and this isn't quite in the bottom 2 or 3, is always enjoyable, and it's okay. Everyone in it's pretty good. The action's all right. The story's okay. It keeps the plate spinning. We get a bit more of Infinity Stone stuff, and of course, the Vision is created by an Infinity Stone that's now in his forehead. So, where an Infinity Stone started the film is not where it ended the film. So, in terms of setting up that chessboard of where everything is, a few of the pieces have been moved around again. So, it serves a purpose. It does a decent job. The lasting legacy of this film probably was to give us a plot for Civil War, which is a much, much better film. But it's okay.
Becca?
Yeah, I think what I said at the beginning, that's kind of like sums up my final thoughts on it. As I say, the man whose name I can't remember. Joss Whedon was very much the golden boy. Yeah, going into this film. And as you said, Dave, by the end of it, perhaps less so. I do feel a bit bad for him, because he did, had so much promise, and I think from this, he was to direct the next Avengers films that we would see, but I do agree. I think this film did break him to a certain extent. Even he worked with many of the cast members before, obviously creating Much Ado About Nothing, literally in the interim, which is really enjoyable. Just as a segue, you know, if you're interested in Shakespeare or Shakespeare on screen, go and see it. It makes it really accessible, and it's shot in a really interesting way. But it's a film well worth checking out, even if maybe you don't understand Shakespeare.
It's worth checking out, but I don't think it's like really well made or anything. It's literally just like, yeah, sure, just film stuff at his house with his mates.
That's what makes it interesting, though. That's what makes it interesting, and that's what brings it, you know, really bang up to date. But anyway, but yeah, no, I kind of feel that you know, the film's production problems are all on the screen. It's kind of very choppy. It doesn't flow. Spader is wasted. All the best bits are in the trailer, unfortunately, and I do struggle with this film. Hopefully one day I'll have a good experience of it. But it was just too long, too busy, too much going on. Just not the Avengers sequel that we were all hoping for, unfortunately.
Yeah, it would almost have been better had it been like a third Avengers film rather than a second one in some respects. Do you know what I mean? It was following the Avengers, and it was the first film after that 2014 double where they produced, you know, Captain America: The Winter Soldier, which was just superb, but, you know, kind of serious. And then this really playful Guardians film, and you think they can do anything now. And then they've produced this from Joss Whedon, and I want to see what the future holds for him, because he's not very old, Joss Whedon. He's only in his 50s now, so he's got decades left to do things. But unfortunately, since this, he hasn't done very much. He came in to do something of a rescue job on Justice League, and like I say, I think that was a bit of a thankless task. He's not suited to working on Zack Snyder material anyway.
No.
And consequently, I doubt he improved it any. I'm not one of these that's waiting for the Snyder cut, because Snyder is a mostly bad filmmaker. But I don't think adding Joss Whedon into the mix helped. But it just means that since this film, we haven't seen much from him. So we don't know what he's got left. The chances are he'll come out of hibernation with something, and it will be decent.
I think he was trying to get like Batgirl done, and that's why he did Justice League, because they was like, oh, that's fine. Well, if I do Justice League, then
he pulled out of that. He pulled out of Batgirl because he signed for it, said yes, and then decided he didn't really have a story to tell. Well, okay, I'm not a creative. I don't want to be critical, but years are going by now, and he hasn't actually done anything for a while. He doesn't owe us anything. But it just leaves that question mark that when this wasn't very good and Justice League wasn't very good, does this man have anything left?
Or is he making way for a comeback?
I expect he'll have a comeback at some point.
I've got no doubt he'll continue to make things. I've just seen here as well, I've got his page up at the moment. I've just seen his marriage. He got divorced in 2016 as well, so... that's the one thing I hadn't thought of. There would have been a degree of turbulence in his private life around this point, so that cannot have helped.
Do you remember the Twitter controversy about like the stuff with Black Widow and like her being a monster, her line of dialogue? How that caused a stir
because she could no longer have children,
yeah.
And it caused a stir. And people started saying, "Are you saying women who can't have children are a monster?" And it's like, can you not understand the nuance of a woman thinking that of herself, because she's held herself to the highest possible standards, and it's how she feels about herself. It's a self-esteem thing.
Yeah, it's not like it's
not an objective view on women who can't have kids. It's a woman who holds herself to a ridiculous standard.
It's this ridiculous like outrage like culture thing where like get outraged at the slightest thing. It's almost like no, that every character says stuff is character's point of view. Yeah, or it's not. It's like it's
to
like.
Be honest, I'm all for like be careful in that, you know, why cause offence when you don't have to.
But it's context, though, isn't it?
Why alienate sections of society? But you had it with Thor's "he's adopted" joke in the first Avengers 2. I see what they're saying. I do actually see I didn't with the Thor one. I thought that was ridiculous. In this case, I sort of see what they're saying. But you have to take the context of this woman opening her heart to someone who she now thinks she can't get and won't be able to get as soon as he learns she can't do this. And it's also, she's tied it up with her own image of herself and her femininity. And given she's gone through several years of killing and all that sort of thing in between, hence the previous film and there being a lot of red in her ledger, it's another stick to beat herself with. That's all it is. So, yeah, I see where they're coming from, but I don't agree. But I have to say, I might have a bit more understanding of all of this if I knew more about this film.
This time, I do have some fun facts.
That's fun,
Well,
folks.
That's a preemptive judgment. That it
Yes,
was.
because last time I didn't have
That
have
will
very many
be
fun
fun,
facts.
folks. We should have said
That may in the future
Well,
be
well, I've already
very
just
fun.
come, so
that's about to be fun, folks. Yeah.
Well, last time I was a bit underprepared,
You
and I
can't
had to
put the
I had to
tea-
find
can't-
some on the fly.
You can't get the toothpaste back in the tube, can you, Chris?
it's done. It's out there. I need a tissue.
Right.
Well, I hope it's minty flavour.
I was going to say, really? What investment have you got in the taste of it?
Baking soda. I don't know.
Right, carry on.
Yes, fun fact number 1. Industrial Light and Magic developed a new motion capture system called Muse, especially for this film. And it was developed and enhanced by none other than mocap hero Andy Serkis. And it was developed for like the role of Ultron and the Hulk, so that it can capture the face and body movement simultaneously. So the actors could be with the other cast members, with the other ensemble, and not have to work separate apart from them, which is quite good. So I think that's really interesting. Fun fact number 2, the film's trailer was viewed 34 million times in the first 24 hours after being released, breaking the record that was previously held by Iron Man 3. I don't actually know which is the highest viewed trailer, so I need to look that up. Probably this latest one.
Oh, what now?
Yeah,
I think it will be Avengers 4.
it probably will be, actually. So, it's probably, I imagine, actually, no, it probably won't be. Yeah, I think it probably will be Avengers 4, actually.
The Phantom Menace in quick time.
Quick time. Let's go back a bit. Do it, it's a blast from the past.
2 weeks after you sort of set it running, you can watch a little trailer and, you know.
Good old quick
Thumbnail.
time. Fun fact number 3. I was going to call him Lou Ferrigno. That's how I wrote it. Lou Ferrigno contributes the voice of the Hulk in this film, and has pretty much played the Hulk in every kind of live action and cartoon and adaptation going.
The funny thing is, he
It's
didn't
almost
do
like
the
he's
voice of it.
typecast.
Well, the
Funny you say that.
Yeah, he never gets cast as, like, I don't know, a fit female model or something.
No, Mrs. Hulk.
That's sexist. That.
The funny thing is, Lou Ferrigno has voiced every Hulk except his own.
Yeah.
He didn't voice his own incarnation of the Hulk.
No,
But anyway,
that's fun, folks.
that's fun, folks!
And yeah, so fun fact number 4. This is one of the very few times that we see Thor, but we don't see Loki. And also we see Iron Man, but no Pepper Potts.
Yeah, I think that was another aspect with this film that I just felt. I mean, Jane and Pepper had both been in the Phase 2 films, which surprised me because I didn't think they hadn't been in the sort of. Well, I think Pepper had been in the Avengers briefly, but Jane hadn't. And we know that, well, Natalie Portman, rightly or wrongly, has a reputation for being snooty about these things. I thought Gwyneth Paltrow did as well, but I think she's been in more than enough of these to have proved that wrong. And of course, when they both didn't turn up for this, I just thought, yeah, they're not even bothered about building like proper storylines from them all now. It's just smash them all together and leave these people out. So I thought that was a shame. But there you go.
It was funny with the Forgo, but Jane's better.
What's that, sorry?
It was funny with that. Thor had that line of saying Jane's better.
Yeah.
And my final fun fact, number 5, both Aaron Taylor Johnson and Robert Downey Jr. have both played versions of Charlie Chaplin. Downey Jr. obviously famously played Chaplin in a film of the same name.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Which I've still never seen. I hear it's brilliant.
Oh, you got to check it out. It was like on my watch list for years and years and years and years and years, and I bought it on Blu-ray, and it's very, very heartfelt, very touching. One of the best performances, and Taylor Johnson obviously played a younger version of Charlie Chaplin in Shanghai Nights. So, like, from the sublime to the ridiculous.
It's good fun, Shanghai Nights.
Yeah, it's a good laugh. I think it's one of his earlier roles as well. So, they don't make films like that anymore.
Like
Shanghai Nights,
Shanghai
but
Nights.
it's probably for the best.
Yeah, we're all gutted.
Yeah, it's probably for the best.
Well, they've done plenty of Rush Hours. I mean, yeah, I'm sure they got a third film. No, I'm sure they were planning on a third one.
Probably. They don't make films like that anymore.
No. Sadly.
And that's my 5 fun facts for Avengers: Age of Ultron.
Okay, brilliant. I'm amazed. I was worried with this. I'm worried with some of the Marvel films that, they're all right, aren't they? And you think, I don't know how much we're going to have to say about them. I'm really surprised we've got this length of show out of this, because I just thought this film was really thin. I think it's a sign that Marvel are actually always okay. We've just damned this film with faint praise and it won't rank very high, but, if Justice League had been at this standard, we'd have been quite happy.
Yeah, true.
You know what I mean? This is a studio that's...
It's the secret to Marvel's success. It's been consistently good.
I know, and this is a studio that's made a rod for its own back by being just bankable. Justice League would have been, fantastic at this standard, really.
Yeah, I don't know, but yeah, I guess it would have been an element of like, well, it wasn't that bad.
Well, I just think compared to what you'd be expecting as well.
Yeah.
The already by then it was like this universe is failing. So, yeah. Okay. In terms of social media, you can find me at ThePastyKid1976 on Twitter.
You can find me at Soundtracks on Twitter. You can also find this podcast with all the other all backlog of podcasts at soundtracks.co.uk.
And you can follow us on Twitter at Expect Us to Talk. We're also on the same moniker on Facebook, and also on YouTube and iTunes. If you type in "Do Expect Us to Talk," you should find us on there. And don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe.
The great thing is we do have something to say about what the next show is going to be, so we don't have to sign off tonight with no night. Sleep tight. Cheers.
Don't let the bed bugs bite.
All right, bugger off.
Okay. Well, we found this now twice at the end of, or towards the end of phases. Marvel seem to like to follow an Avengers film by sort of scaling it down a bit in more ways than one, which means, Becca,
Do Expect to Talk will return with, I think I just stepped on that Ant-Man.